What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you the final part in the full story of Divine Divinity. And that story, of course, tells us how Lucian became the Divine as his most well-known role in Divinity Original Sin 2, let's be honest. This is the last part. Last episode, we wrapped up with gathering all of the 7 council members together, and we stopped right before they performed the ritual to make us the Divine. Now, as I mentioned in that episode, from this point, it is pretty much a straight shot to the end of the game, so there's really not that much going on. So, just to fill you in, they perform the ritual. They have to wait to summon you back from death, because that's part of the ritual. They have to basically sacrifice you, and then the divines resurrect you is kind of how it works. The gods, that is. So while they're waiting for the notice to summon you back, basically, Janus comes in. Now, at this point, Janus loses all pretense and completely sheds his 12-year-old boy form and fully transforms into the Demon of Lies. The Demon of Lies, of course, being the tiny fragment of the Lord of Chaos that was inside the Sword of Lies that the Lord of Chaos had forged so he could instill a piece of himself into it and use that to bring himself full-fledged into the world, because the gods, through their sacrifice made before this game and seen off-screen, had made it impossible for him to actually enter the world. All of that explained, the Lord of Chaos shows up, the Demon of Lies shows up, kills pretty much all of the council members we had just assembled after they performed the ritual, and then we get this awesome cutscene about us becoming the Divine. And then, after this happens, we wake up in the desert, with some orcs having an interesting conversation nearby. What becoming the Divine actually means in game mechanics terms is you gain in the ballpark of around 5 to 6 levels instantaneously, basically, depending on, your actual level. It's like a set amount of experience, but more or less it'll be around there. The orcs point us on the way to a village nearby that has been destroyed by the Black Ring. So we, of course, follow that path down to that village, and who do we run into but Zandalor and Arhu. Now, Zandalor and Arhu explain that you have been gone for months, like several months, and in that time, the Demon of Lies has basically been rampaging across the dukedom of Ferrell, and it's just been basically killing and causing general strife. Now, the human population and the elves were able to take refuge with the dwarves, which saved some of them, but people are dying in droves, right? So Zandalor explains that you, being the new, awesome, super-powered Divine, should really probably go kill the Demon of Lies before he finally finishes summoning in the actual Lord of Chaos. So, from here, Zandalor tells us that in order to reach the Black Ring base, which is on a lake to the east, we are going to have to find a way to cross this lake that is instantaneous death. So it sounds to me a lot like the idea of Death Fog, but they hadn't actually cemented that idea yet. But basically, if you walk on the water over here, you die. So in order to get past that, you have to master a form of the divine called Spirit Form, which basically lets you turn into a ghost and travel without aggroing any monsters and taking any damage. Now you can do this one of two ways. One, you can go talk to the Patriarch, which is a black dragon nearby. He's largely considered the oldest and the leader of dragons in general, which is why he's called the Patriarch. And if you talk to him, he can teach you one rank of spirit form, or alternatively, you can take all of the skill points you just earned from becoming the Divine and just manually put them into spirit form. Literally either of these works. So from here, the little desert area you're in, it basically just serves as a primer. If you need to grind out a couple more levels, anything like that, there's one person in the wrecked village that you got sent back to, which is actually the Orc Council member who managed to survive the attack, as well as Zandalor. So you can use him as a merchant to buy more potions, anything you might need, and then it's pretty much just straight off to the Black Ring Island. From here, once we've spirit formed our way across the lake and gotten to the Black Ring hideout, it's basically just a dungeon run to the end of the game. The 5 Black Ring Elders that we have encountered throughout the rest of the game while gathering council members and doing various activities, you should have encountered 5 of them, and now you have to kill all of them to clear the way to the Demon of Lies. Most of them are fine, and this is where I'm going to mention that this is an old game and cheesing bosses is a thing. So some of them, if you have literally just one rank in polymorph, you can polymorph, and that's it. Fight's over. They're polymorphed. You can just beat them to death. Like they just run from you at that point. It's hilarious. However, there are 2 bosses that you can't just instantaneously polymorph, and that is Josephina and Iona. So Iona is not nearly as bad, so you can pretty much melee her down if you can't polymorph her. Josephina, as I mentioned in my last episode, is honestly harder than the last boss. She is a nightmare, which is funny because the boss, she was the last Black Ring Elder I beat. Going from her to the Demon of Lies is hilarious. Like, it's so easy. It's just criminal, almost. She should have been the last boss. That is how difficult she was. So what makes her difficult? Well, I'll explain that. Just because I had so much annoyance with her, I'm going to tell you all about it. So she opens up by summoning a Death Knight, casting a shield, and then casting Blind on you before hitting you with AoE spells until you die. So here's the thing. The Death Knight is whatever. You can kill that pretty easily. The shield and the blind are the problem. So blind in this game means you can't even see your target to target them. You can't hit them because you literally can't see them to target them, which means they're unattackable. So to get around that, you basically have to use a stealth potion or run away until the effect runs off. Or that's pretty much it. You can stand there and get hit, I guess, if you want, but that's pretty much your only option at that point. The thing is, she's immune to the polymorph trick, at least in my experience. Supposedly, you're supposed to be able to use this curse spell, which lowers resistances, and then you can polymorph her, but I spammed this curse, and that never worked. So, I mean, I just don't see it happening. But how I finally wound up beating her was definitely some cheese. So when you first run up to her, there's about a 2-second window where she goes to cast her shield and the Death Knight, and if you hit her during that attack, like if your attack actually connects, it'll interrupt her. So what I wound up having to do is use this trap spell called Summon Scorpion or whatever, or like a Trap Scorpion. And I had like 11 of them, so I spawned all of them in, and they didn't do a lot of damage, but they were hitting her so quickly that she could never actually get her shield up or get the Death Knight summoned. The thing is, at that point, you're just like, oh, you just used a Scorpion. That's not necessarily cheesing, really. You're just using an ability. Yeah, but, so when you use Curse, it actually freezes the target in place for like half a second through the cast animation. So in order to keep her from moving and even trying to use her shield, I just spammed Curse while these scorpions slowly stung her to death. And that was how I basically cheesed this boss. So there you go. There's more information than you needed about Josephina. So after all these Black Ring Elders are finally dead, you can go fight the Demon of Lies, but of course not immediately. So you have to trek up his path in the dungeon, fight through a bunch of enemies to the Demon's Fortress, as it's called. Now it's kind of shaped in a weird bat-like situation where you have to go to the far left and the far right, or like the tip of the wings, to hit these levers to unlock the door to go fight the Demon of Lies. Now, while this is happening, it turns out that the Demon of Lies has completed his summoning. He has summoned the Lord of Chaos. That is to say that he has instilled the fragment from the Sword of Lies, which is basically him, more or less, into an infant. Now, we go in, we kill the actual Demon of Lies, but again, it's too late. The ritual has completed to summon the Lord of Chaos. So then we're given this pretty cool cutscene about whether or not Lucian decides to kill the baby, or, basically what goes on. So what we see here, at the time it was intended to be vague. So, they didn't know if they were going to get to make another game, so they kind of left it open. You never actually see him take an action one way or the other with the baby. You never see him carry it out. You don't know if it's loot or the baby. You also see the Sword of Lies try to convince him to pick it up, basically, and then become possessed himself. He refuses, casting it back into Hell, which in this dimension is called Nemesis. And that's pretty much the end of the story right there, guys. So we managed to kill the Demon of Lies, but unfortunately he did succeed in his ultimate goal, which was, of course, summoning the Lord of Chaos. Now, he was able to put it in an infant child, so this child, we know now, because obviously games have come out since then, becomes Damien, the Damned One. Lucian and Damien basically fight for a very, very long time. We know that story up to Divinity 2, which is actually the latest game in terms of the timeline. We know that Damien is still alive and Lucian is still alive. We'll have to see if Flareon ever decides to pick up where that end game, like the end of the series timeline, we'll have to see if they ever decide to pick that back up and carry on with the story. But this is it, guys. This is how Lucian became the Divine. So if you know him from Divinity Original Sin 2, there you go. You might have also heard about Damien or any of those in them. He's mentioned in some of the lore books. So basically from here, Lucian, as we now know who he actually was, Lucian takes Damien, raises him as his own. That goes south, which I explain in my Divinity series timeline video below. And there you go, guys. That's all I got for you. So there are going to be probably a couple more videos about Divine Divinity, just some stuff about like the recurring characters that show up later, kind of what this game brought to the series. And then lastly, I actually want to do a bit of a surprise video about who Alexander's mother might be, because he's not mentioned in any other game besides Divinity Original Sin 2. And this game actually gives a clue as to who I think that woman is supposed to be. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video and the entire story of Divine Divinity. If you did, by all means, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know all about it. Do what you got to do. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.